Google it.
And we are now live on Facebook, Chair.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April 21st meeting of the Lower Russian River MAC. It is now, I believe, 5:31 p.m. and I'm going to call the meeting to order. We are going to start, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Vesta has gracefully agreed to lead us in the pledge.
Jason, there it is, the flag. I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vesta. All right, let's do a roll call. Elise, you want to?
Roll call, starting in Forestville, Vesta, Cope Stakes.
Here, present.
Lisa Namenson.
Present.
Moving to Hacienda, Alice Teeter. Where are you, Alice? Going to Rio Nido, Pip Marquez de la Plata.
I'm here.
Moving to Guerneville, Naomi Hofstetter. Here. Nick Pereira.
Here.
Into Monterio, Kyra Wink.
Present.
And up to Cazadero, Tony Goodwin.
Hello.
Thanks so much, all.
Thank you. So first thing to actually get your all input in is on approval of the agenda. Everyone should have the agenda in front of them. For those of you that are viewing online, we posted it in a whole bunch of different places on Facebook, on the county site. If you don't have it, you can get access to it there on the Lower Russian River MAC Facebook page as well.
And we have two changes.
And we have two changes with some folks. One is we have Tom McNeil from the Sheriff's Department was going to be with us, but we have Lieutenant Tim Duke instead. Thank you, Tim, for joining us this evening. And we also, when we talk about homeless solutions, we will have Tina Rivera, who's the Director of Health Services, join Paul Osmondson during that section. So with those changes, can I get someone on the council to move to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
All right, there's Vesta's.
I second.
Was that Nick?
Yes, it was.
All right. Thank you, guys. All in favor? Great, thank you. All right, now it's the time for anyone on the council. If you have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda, speak now, forever hold your peace. Well, you know what I mean. Anyway, if anyone has a conflict, now's the time to state what that conflict is. Anybody? Okay. So in correspondence, we did have a PG&E letter that was sent to us, which is in the packet. There's no action on it that we need to formally take. But that is in the packet for anyone to review.
I want to thank you for sending it, for writing it and sending it.
Sure. Well, it was a collaborative effort, but
You plural.
yes. Okay. So let's move on to the minutes from last meeting. Everyone should have had a chance to review the minutes, submit any changes you have, but if you have any other changes, now's the time to let us know and we can revise the minutes accordingly. Anyone have any changes to the minutes?
No.
No? Does someone want to move to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
All right, thank you, Nick.
I second.
Vesta's got her hand up to second.
Yep.
All right, we're getting better at this, guys. We're moving along.
This is our fourth year.
All right, yeah. Wait, what, you know, some of us are a little slow. So anyway, so can I get someone to, call the roll so we can get the minutes approved, or we can just do a raise of hands.
Yes, why don't you just raise
We'll
your
do
hands.
a visual raise of hands to approve the minutes.
Or approve. I see all of the hands raised except for Kyra's not showing her picture. Kyra, are you raising your hand?
You can just unmute and say yes or no, Kyra.
Oops.
Huh, well, all in favor except for an abstention from Kyra.
Yeah. All right.
You ducked out for a minute.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we added this to the agenda last time, and I think it worked out pretty well, where if any council member has any comments, and keep it brief because we have a real beefy meeting, to make any announcements that are not on the agenda, now is the time to do that. And I see Lisa's hands up.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is from myself and Vesta. On March 30th, Forestville reps yours truly, Vesta and alternate Lucy Hardcastle hosted a Forestville Town Hall in concert with the Chamber of Commerce and the Planning Association and the 5th District Supervisor Office. Thank you, Elise, also for managing the OWL and the Zoom. The topics covered were specific to Forestville, sidewalks, intersections, bike lanes, our downtown park, a proposed skate park, new businesses, and forming a fire-safe Forestville Council. It was well attended with 120 people, hybrid-wise, at the elementary school. We got enough interest in forming a local fire-safe council that we are starting to work on. There's a community meeting on May 22nd in concert with the Sonoma County Fire Department. And if any of tonight's meeting attendees are interested in being part of a Forestville Council, please send an email to vesta@sonic.net, which Vesta you could put in the chat. To get on our email news list, we welcome anyone with time, energy, and skills to make this happen. Helping our river communities prepare for fire this season and always is essential. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Any other council members with any announcements that are not related to stuff on the agenda? No, I don't see any hands. Okay, same for those of you out in Facebook land and on Zoom. Now's the time, if you have a comment to make or a question to pose to the council on items that are not on the agenda. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time. If you do bring something up on the agenda, I'm going to basically ask you to bring it up later. But now anything that's not on the agenda, you're more than welcome to bring up now. Anyone out there? I don't see any hands. Jason, you're really going to have to help me with this because there's a lot of people.
No hands are raised, Chair, and I'm not seeing anything on Facebook yet.
So I have a point of information or a question. We received an email about from Brian Borchers, who is the owner of Russian River Cycles, talking about some additional info on bike lanes. So I just wanted to bring that up to ask what's the appropriate way to bring his email into our meeting?
His email was answered. He asked for what was the best way to get his prospective bike route into the planning people. And so we sent it to the appropriate people and we'll get back to him with that feedback.
Awesome.
If he wants to attend the meeting and or put it forth as an agenda item in a future meeting, he can do so. But it didn't come through as official correspondence in time for the packet, and he's not here to present it. So it was, I handled it as a District 5 constituent question.
Thank you. Thanks for answering that.
Okay.
Chair, we do have a hand raised now for
Okay.
public comment.
How's that?
Alex Averbach.
Hi, I just bring it up because you happen to mention the bike lane thing. I sent in an email also about the meeting that's upcoming about the Guerneville redrawing and asking whether there would be bike lanes in terms of when they redo the downtown Guerneville area, since eventually there theoretically should be a bike lane all the way down River Road to the ocean. And so would we start there? And so I didn't know if we could bring it up here. So I bring it up here.
Great. Yes, you can bring it up here. We can't talk about it thoroughly tonight because it's not on the agenda, but definitely make a note of that. And I see Lynda's nodding her head on that as well. So
We have another hand raised. Elvira False. Here, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I was just at my Five Creek Restoration Project and Dave Morton can't be on this MAC meeting, but he asked me to, he's our horticulturalist on our creek project. Does anyone have a solution to the fires posed by the homeless groups under the bridge? We've been having to call in fires a lot underneath the bridge on 116 Brookside and also on 4th Street over by the resorts. And
Elvira, that is something that is specifically on the agenda. So we will definitely have probably a very robust discussion about that location and others in a bit.
excellent, thank you.
Sure thing. All right, any other hands raised?
That's all we have, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So now we're going to go on to the regular calendar items, and Supervisor Hopkins is going to give an overview of some things that are going on specific to the Lower Russian River.
Great, thank you. And I also did just receive word that even though we wanted to do the show of hands, that it sounds like we do need a formal roll call. So if we could sort of take that vote that we had with a show of hands over again verbally, I just got a little note about that. So could we,
okay.
Chair, would you mind running
No,
that?
and that was specifically on the minutes?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Can we get we had a first, a motion to approve, and we had a second. Can we do a roll call on approving the minutes from the last meeting?
Tony Goodwin. Naomi Hofstetter.
Yep.
Vesta Copestakes.
Yes.
Lisa Namenson.
Yes.
Kyra Wink.
Aye.
Nick Pereira.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, here.
Oh, Pip. Sorry, I missed you.
That's all right.
Apologize.
All right. All right.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. All right, back to you, Supervisor Hopkins.
Great, thank you very much. I just wanted to frame a little bit the conversation that we are about to have around homelessness and also wildfire risk in West County. And I want to acknowledge that, it often seems like it's the alphabet soup of different government agencies, none of which wholly own the challenge of rural homeless encampments that unfortunately can be ignition sources for wildfires out in our area, or sort of smaller fires that can threaten adjacent structures and nearby buildings. And so we're lucky to be joined tonight by many of those partner agencies, but I did want to provide a bit of an update on where we stand. So we are actually working on coordinating a mapping system, and this is where our office is trying to be a bit of the convener and a bit of the glue for all of the different partners. And that includes health services as our sort of homeless service provider within county government, but also reaching out and partnering with both our local fire agencies, CalFire, as well as the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, because truly it actually requires all of those different agencies to wrap our hands and arms and support around this problem and to make meaningful progress. And the other really important ingredient is all of you, right? It's going to take community members actually engaging in and providing information about what you see on the ground in real time. And then, working with us to try to bring resources to those encampments and also awareness to the property owners. So it really truly is a partnership and a collaboration. And speaking of collaboration, I also want to acknowledge, since we're having everything virtually, you don't always get to see who else is in the actual audience, but we're actually joined this evening by the chairman of the Kashaya tribe, Reno Franklin. And so I just wanted to acknowledge his presence and thank him for his fantastic leadership on the North Coast and really on a national level, and look forward to engaging with him on these subjects as well. And it might be wonderful for both of our MACs at some point to invite him formally to present and provide an update from the Kashaya. So just wanted to flag that and say thank you, Chairman, for joining us in this meeting tonight. So that's really, I just kind of wanted to set the stage that this is a challenging issue. We've had specific meetings about homeless services and encampments, and there's also a lot of legal perspective that ties our hands in certain instances with respect to what we can do around enforcement. But we are doing what we can within the confines of the law and also within the confines of what is moral, right? You don't want to just sort of play whack-a-mole. You don't want to just keep pushing challenging situations around to another neighborhood. We actually want to get folks into housing and stabilized. And so for that reason, we have aggressively pursued solutions and places that folks can actually exist that are safe. Want to say thank you to Tim Miller and West County Community Services for running a 24/7 Guerneville Vets Shelter, which they had never anticipated doing before the pandemic happened. And then also wanted to thank the city of Sebastopol, because the Sebastopol Inn project, which was funded by Project Homekey, and I'd also like to thank Director Rivera for her tremendous work on this project, has housed many residents from the lower Russian River. And so it's part of this pipeline to get folks out of the encampments, off the streets, and actually into permanent supportive housing. And so it was great to see the city of Sebastopol step up. We also are hoping to secure Project Homekey funds to complete George's Hideaway, which we also have some of our staff members here who can tell us a little bit more about that project and how it can hopefully help us address the rural encampments that we're experiencing in the lower Russian River. We've been blessed, I think, with the rain, right? And so having a little bit less of a stress around fire, but we can't take our foot off the gas pedal on this one, because we really need to make sure that we are ready. It's going to dry out, and we are going to have that wildfire threat, and we're going to need to make sure that all of our agencies are ready and working together. So later on, Elise and Leo will be telling a little bit about how our office is trying to spearhead a pilot project around mapping that will hopefully ultimately be included in the county institutional infrastructure, where anyone can actually report an unsheltered encampment. And then we'll have all of our agencies with access to the same data to be able to respond to that. So with that, I'll give it back to the chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I really just want to kind of provide the framing for this critical topic. And also thank you, Chair, for your work and your leadership and attending the department and agency head meeting on the subject, and then holding this sort of special meeting of the MAC to focus on that with a little bit of wastewater thrown in.
A little bit of wastewater. We don't like a lot of wastewater. Any questions for Lynda on what she was just commenting on? And keep in mind that we are going to get deep into these subjects as we progress through this meeting. Council? No? All right. Anyone in the public? All right. With that, we're gonna move to, I believe is it Kyla? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Rich Homer.
And Rich, we're gonna talk about the Citizens Advisory Council. We're gonna get an update from them, and commonly known as the good old CAG.
We have a slide. Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm Rich Homer, and Kyla Brook. We're going to be presenting a talk about septic system issues. We're mainly focused on Monterey Villa Grande, but this applies to a big group of people. To start off with, the state has water quality control boards that have different areas of jurisdiction throughout the state. And our particular water quality control board is the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. These boards are obligated to do studies of total maximum daily loads for water bodies in their area. Basically, that's a study that shows the level of existing contaminants and what level is acceptable as far as meeting the water quality criteria. The TMDL's goal is to restore and maintain surface water quality. It includes a very detailed study of the water body and leads to setting criteria for the amount of contaminants can enter a particular body. The North Coast Board has 30 TMDLs they're either working on or have adopted. The TMDL study can lead to what's called a 303D listing as an impaired water body. This is a guideline under the federal EPA standards. The Russian River has been determined to be impaired by pathogens, sediment, and temperature in certain defined segments. The Water Quality Control Board determined in 2019 and again in 2021 that certain segments of the Russian River drainage are impaired by pathogens. The final action approving the TMDL is pending at the State Water Resources Control Board, which is the parent agency to the Water Quality Control Boards. The TMDL leads to what's called an Advanced Protection Management Plan or an action plan. And this is the plan that implements the results of the TMDL. It applies to certain defined boundaries along the waterway. And on the Russian River, it affects approximately 8,000 parcels. Within the APMP area, on-site wastewater treatment systems, which are also known as septic systems, that are located within 600 feet of a perennial stream or the river must meet very strict standards. This applies to the drainage areas as well as the river. The standards include repairing or replacing on-site systems that are discharging to the surface, replacing cesspools, correcting systems where the waste flow exceeds the system capacity, and upgrading systems that don't meet the minimum requirements of the APMP. The property owner must initially submit a description of their on-site system to the Water Quality Control Board. An operational inspection is required of all on-site systems every 5 years. Supplemental treatment systems are required for all new systems, and systems that are replaced are subject to major repairs. There's strict requirements for the continued use of seepage pits. Within 15 years, all systems must meet the APMP standards, or 20 years if a community solution is underway. Excuse me. In addition to the action by the Water Quality Control Board, the state has adopted what they call their OTS policy, or the on-site wastewater treatment system policy. They adopted that in 2013. And the Sonoma County adopted in 2019 as mandated by the state policy. The state policy and the county policy requires that all new replacement systems must meet all criteria specified in the policy or obtain a variance. Non-conforming repairs to on-site systems are not allowed without a variance, and most work that will be done to a system under the APMP will be considered a replacement. The criteria that must be met for replacement systems include meeting setbacks to the river and to drainage courses, analysis of soil and groundwater, adequate depth and type of soil, and sufficient clearance to the groundwater, as well as many other requirements. The replacement OTS must be adequately sized for the residents, which is an issue when we have small lots. There's going to be many parcels in the APMP that don't meet these requirements. So Kyla is going to go on and talk about what we're doing.
Thank you. So Rich was talking about why we're here, and I'll be talking about what we are doing and how that's working. We've known for a long time that we've had problems with septic systems along the Russian River, and we've made many attempts to address the issue individually and as groups. The state and county have now issued the regulations that require us as individuals to take action over the coming years. To help uncover solutions, the state, county, and water agency launched a pilot project in both Monterey and Villa Grande, in part because our communities have had a long history of attempting to address this issue, and also because we're considered economically disadvantaged that might provide more funding. The state and county convened our Citizens Advisory Group, the CAG, in June of 2018 to help inform the pilot program. The good news is they're listening to us as citizens. Communities that are impacted are subject to the no oats policy or OTS policy, which is what Rich was talking about. And they include Jenner, Cazadero, Camp Meeker, Monterey, Villa Grande, Guerneville, Rio Neto, Summer Home Park, Hacienda, Mirabel, and Fitch Mountain, along with other possible communities. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my screen here. The CAG members are all volunteers. We work by consensus and we actively participate in an advisory capacity and as interagency team members. The interagency team, IT, consists of delegates from the county, the state, the water agency, and now also the CAG. We're a stable group. We have only lost one member, Mike Riley, when he died in December 2019. We have two primary roles: advising the interagency team that's coordinating regulatory perspectives and implementation efforts, including the wastewater treatment improvement project for the Monterey Villa Grande area. And we're supporting citizens in understanding how the pilot project, in combination with the new regulations, might impact them. We're appointed by the interagency team, and we've, as I said, met consistently for 3 years. Our members: Brenda Edelman of Rio Neo, Russian River Watershed; myself, a realtor and president of Friends of Villa Grande; Dan Fine, Monterey technology consultant; Rich Homer, a septic systems consultant; Brian Grant, a project coordinator with Practice Architects; Steve Mack, retired general manager of Sweetwater Springs; Steve Trippy, president and retired executive director of New Ways to Work; Sarah Yardley, Hacienda, a retired civil engineer; Ed Fortner, Forestville, general manager of Sweetwater Springs; and our ad hoc member is Kyra Wink of the MAC. Our areas of focus now are advocating for people, resources, solutions, support, and assistance, including funding, building political goodwill, providing for direct assistance to individuals, exploring a range of alternatives, and supporting sustainable solutions. We influence the county and state to heighten awareness for the need for a priority in wastewater issues with the state and county staff and elected officials. We focus on getting the county more deeply engaged in funding, support, and solutions, and increasing permit Sonoma participation and engagement in the process. We collaborate with the project consultants and implementation partners. We provide advice on all aspects of the Monterey Villa Grande pilot project. Our communications, we include the public and the community. We provide easy access to minutes and relevant documents. It includes a website, press releases, updates to elected officials, and others. We help with community events, and we help develop and support overall communications and strategies. Our accomplishments: we have presented to the CAG in the past, we presented to the MAC in the past, and also to the state and regional water quality control boards. We've participated in the selection process to identify consultants for a feasibility study of potential wastewater solutions and implementation of Monterey Villa Grande. This consultant is well underway, and the selection is well underway and should occur soon. We've provided input to this role and selection of the ombudsperson responsible for supporting county residents in understanding and complying with wastewater regulations. We've worked with regulators to address what owners of septic systems can do if their systems fail or need improvement while broader solutions are being identified. We've introduced our issues to state and federal elected and agency officials and requested their support in finding acceptable, broader solutions and identifying funding sources. We've hosted tours for the regional board and Sonoma water staff of the area to familiarize them in the scope and the scale of the issues, including locations and steepness of slopes. We've met with representatives of the BOSS and encouraged a countywide approach to wastewater. This resulted in the BOSS budgeting a $350,000 allocation of county funds to better understand the scale of the issue countywide and creating a full-time countywide permanent wastewater analyst position. This will include the ombudsperson currently in the hiring process. We've pushed for a more generous interpretation of the state on-site wastewater treatment system, policy in the county's OTS manual, and influence technical language in the state board's LAMP, local area management plan, and the county's OTS manual, including a definition of qualified inspector of individual septic systems. If this sounds like pea soup, it is. Our CAG meetings, the CAG generally meets the fourth Thursday of each month from 6 to 8 p.m. We're currently doing that on Zoom. And if you're interested in attending our meetings, we'd love to have you join. Please contact Leo at leochi@sonomacounty.org. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Vesta, I see your hand up.
Yeah, let's go to council members
great.
first with any
I
questions or comments.
apologize. Sorry.
That's okay. Can we stop the screen share? There we go. All right, Vesta.
What is the progress of approving composting toilets to get that aspect of water out of what goes into a septic system? And I know that aerobic systems were approved somewhere in the last 10, 15 years, but they don't seem to be that popular. And yet they are good solutions for those tiny lots, steep hills, and areas subject to flood. Also, I noticed a friend of mine purchased land along the Green Valley Creek. And when I brought up this requirement, they have a, what do you call, a cesspool system. He said he was completely unaware of it. And the realtor who sold them the property did not inform him of this process that we're going through. And yes, 15 years is a long way away to get it accomplished. But when will it be required? Is there a time zone when it will be required for real estate agents and brokers to tell potential buyers that this is a requirement that will be coming up for them and is essential? So that's three basic systems that I'm asking about: the composting toilets, aerobic systems, and realtors' requirements to inform potential buyers.
Well, I'll take the first two and Kyla can do the last one. The compost toilet issue actually is addressed in the county standards, but it requires amendments to the county code, which currently, I believe the Board of Supervisors has taken some interest in them. So that would be best addressed by Supervisor Hopkins. The second question on aerobic systems, the county has allowed aerobic systems for many years. They have to be certified by a qualified testing agency. And they require, at the current time, they require an operational permit annually. They still have to meet defined criteria, but they're pretty actually commonly used throughout the county. Kyla, you want to take the realtor issue?
Sure, I'll take the realtor issue. Thank you, Vesta, for that great question. I have been working for years to support realtors in understanding septic issues. It's pretty complex and it's more difficult because the regulations aren't yet in effect that we've been talking about here. So the changes that are happening are difficult for people to understand and move through. I have Vanguard, which I work for now, requires that we provide people with information, and we've set a standard in the area and are supporting other realtors in doing the same. Hopefully, as the regulations become more and more defined, that will continue to increase and change. So I hope that that helps.
Right, thank you.
Perhaps Supervisor Hopkins would like to talk about compost toilets. I know it's her favorite subject.
I would be happy to jump in on composting toilets. And this is a battle that I have been fighting, I would say unsuccessfully so far for about 5 years. But I actually do feel like we are on the cusp of change and movement, with finally kind of a plurality of the Board of Supervisors publicly stating that they want that issue to be folded into our upcoming on-site wastewater treatment system update policy. So right now it's very, very difficult to do. You can talk to Brock Dolman at OAUC about how challenging it is to go through the county's essentially sort of experimental system program. You know, and it really sort of sets a high bar and is not really implementable by an average person who's just trying to, you know, for instance, have a tiny home in their backyard as an ADU or, you know, some kind of cost-effective form of housing. But it is something that I'm hoping that we'll see some movement on. And Nathan Quarles has actually been doing some research on different jurisdictions' policies and seeing if we can get something that's a more streamlined approach to permitting composting toilets. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I don't believe it until I see it, but I'm feeling more hopeful than I have been.
Great. Can I add just one other thing? NORBAR, the North Bay Association of Realtors, has been struggling with these issues for quite a while and are also working very hard to implement information to go out to all realtors regarding what's happening. So, thank you. Any other questions? I haven't seen any.
You're muted.
Pip, you're muted.
Sorry, my mouth was moving, but you couldn't hear me. Sorry. I don't see any other council member hands up with questions, so we're going to turn it over to the public. And both on Facebook and on Zoom, I see Jason, help me out. Was Deborah the first one with her hand raised?
Deborah? Deborah, go ahead. Deborah, if you could unmute yourself.
I did not raise my hand. Are you calling Deborah Newby?
Oh, yes, your hand was raised. So sorry.
Oh, I might have accidentally hit that. I'm so sorry. But we are interested to move forward. These are very helpful. I'll hush so we can get to the fire and homeless issues. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Alexis?
Hi, thank you for all
Alexis?
the work you're doing on this. It concerns me greatly as a septic system homeowner along the Russian River. And I'm wondering if you've seen any kind of willingness on any larger agency, like on a state level, to help with grants or anything. Have you gotten to that layer yet? And does it seem even realistic?
Yes.
Just any hints would be helpful so that we're not, I mean, honestly, it's frightening. There's literally no way I have the dough to do this. And so I'm like, any bit of clue that we're not going to just have to sell our house would be helpful here.
There's actually a number of things that are happening. When the state adopted its on-site policy, they, for the first time ever, provided for low interest loans to homeowners that meet certain criteria that were very easy to meet. But it requires an implementation plan through a county agency. The Water Quality Control Board has told us that there's money available at the state level if the county can set up a way to channel it to individual property owners. In addition, there's money available for these community-wide solutions that, such as what we're working at in Monterey and Villa Grande. We've gotten $500,000 in funding so far for the study, with more anticipated on the way. And hopefully we'll actually be able to get grant money for construction of whatever needs to be done. And we hope that this Monterey and Villa Grande project can serve as a template for other communities along the river to look at when they decide whether or not to address this on a community-wide basis. Did you want to add anything, Kylie?
No, I think that that's good. The biggest hurdle that we are facing currently is that, or one of the hurdles is that in general, much of the funding that's available is allocated from septic to sewer as opposed to other alternatives. And so our group has been working hard to really support both local, state, and federal agencies in understanding that there may need to be additional alternatives.
Are you muted?
Do you see anyone else, Jason, in the public that has their hands raised?
We have two questions in the Q&A
Okay.
from Michael Bloger. And well, we have one now. I believe one was answered. I'll read the other one. Will you consider viewing a YouTube video history of river otters observed near Guerneville from 2017 to 2021? Please see, and Michael posted a YouTube link. I can post that in the chat for everyone. And the other part of the question is, do the MAC members consider the problem of lower flow in the Russian River is just as important as bacterial contamination in septic tanks?
I'm sorry, are you talking about the MAC or are you talking about the CAG or are you talking about other organizations?
The question is, I think anyone would be able to answer this. Do the MAC members consider, MAC or CAG or any of our panelists consider the problem of lower flow in the Russian River is just as important as bacterial contamination in septic tanks?
Well, the two go hand in hand. Essentially, the lower the flow, the greater the concentration of contaminants, which of course is exacerbated when the river mouth closes and the flow becomes somewhat stagnant. The Water Quality Control Board criteria for the water quality objectives are based on meeting both summertime and wintertime flow levels. So it's kind of inherent in the study that they did, but you know, with the flows we're getting now, it's, you know, gonna be real hard to keep the river clean.
Thanks, Rich.
We have one more here from Vera. Could Alexis talk to local ombudsman's RE septic financial help? And then under that from Alexis is there a map anywhere of the extent of the Monte Rio Villa Grande area in the project?
Do we have a map, Kyle? I don't know. I believe the area is defined on the website, which I don't know if we provided a link to that, but it's the actual area is the APMP area in the Monterey and Villa Grande communities. So that's the area that's being studied. The actual final area is actually going to be determined by what the consultant comes up with when they look at all the issues that are necessary. And what was the first part of the question?
Wasn't the question, is there a map?
I thought there were two parts. Okay.
Yes. First part, could Alexis talk to the local ombudsman's RE septic financial help? And then Alexis, is there a map anywhere of the extent of the Monte Rio Villa Grande area in the project?
Yeah, maybe Supervisor Hopkins wants to talk about the ombudsperson and financial help.
Yeah, just a quick update on the ombudsperson. So Alicia Laughlin, who was our former ombudsman, left, the position. And so we were scrambling to find someone to replace her. And at that point, it was a time limited position, but we were actually able to turn it into a permanent position, recognizing that this is going to go on for some number of years. And we also wanted to be able to, recruit the best candidates, right? With a job that's not going to just expire in a year and a half. That's kind of a tough sell for some folks. So we are actually, I believe, in the second round of interviews for that position right now. There was already an initial round and really hoping to get that person on board and up to speed as quickly as possible. And they are now sort of housed in the, I would say, sort of resilience office, and with someone who has quite a bit of experience in regulatory compliance, but is now working more on the climate side. Barbara Lee is going to be their boss. So they'll actually sort of have a little office. And then we also do have an application in for a budget request, which we could certainly use support from community members on. We actually are asking for $75,000 from general fund dollars for the upcoming budget hearings, which occur in mid-June. And that would be to sort of kickstart a pilot program around loan and sort of revolving fund opportunities, and hoping to draw down state monies as well to then add to that pot. And so it would hopefully serve as a local match. So do please consider maybe a support, and support from the CAG would be really helpful, I think, on that. And I don't remember if we let you know that was going in. That just went in last week. So, and then we also have the $350,000 for sort of a big picture study that we're also working on to look again at solutions that go beyond just the sort of Camp Meeker, Mario defined area. And that was county general fund as well.
Thanks. Do we have one more?
We do have one more hand raised. Richard Burkhart. Richard? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay.
Richard, are you there?
Doesn't seem to be able to unmute at this moment, so.
All right. All right, I'm going to count to three. 1, 2, 3. Want to give you an opportunity, but we can't hear anything you may be saying. All right. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Kyla, as well. It was really informative. And thank you for Monterey and Villa Grande kind of piloting this, and all of us are going to be able to take advantage of what you guys do.
Yeah, I do want to note we had an additional hand come up during your 1, 2, 3 from Wilbert.
Oh, okay.
Should we?
Well, yeah, let's do this one quickly. Wilbert?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Beautiful. I have right across my road, there was a fire. Fire department came and put it out. And what the fire was? It was homeless.
What, Wilbert?
Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry. We're going to get to that subject in just a few minutes. So if you can hold off with your comment until we have the CalFire and the Sheriff Department are both going to speak about this issue, and it would be a perfect time to hear what you have to say. And we're going to move to that next. So we'll come back to keep your question in mind. Okay, with that, we are going to move on. Once again, thanks, Rich and Kyla. And we are going to turn it over to Chief Ben Nicholls. I know I saw him out there somewhere. And he's gonna talk a lot about risk mitigation from forest fires. And I know it's on everyone's brain, and it's getting on people's brains earlier than it usually does. And that's natural. This is one of the reasons we thought it was very important to heavily focus on these particular issues tonight. So Ben.
Good evening, Pip. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
So I hope everybody's enjoying the rain as much as I am these last couple of days. It's been amazing. So we'll start off with the good news. So we're just short of about 2 inches for the month of April, which is almost 100% above where we were at in the last 3 years prior. So this rain has definitely given us a nice breath of fresh air as we roll into fire season. But I want to remind the public that coming into this rain are burn indices that basically tell us how extreme fire behavior is going to be or how difficult it's going to be to contain. We're setting record levels. So the rain, the 2 inches that we've gotten has definitely helped bring that bar much lower. And so we're enjoying a little bit of a break on that. But those trends are expected to return to back to where they were, even though we're going to have the seasonable weather here for the next couple weeks. So that being said, as we roll into fire season, the addition of this rain also allowed us to come out of the extreme drought conditions that we were in back to the severe drought. And it's kind of disheartening when we talk about layers of extreme drought or drought status that we're in. But the good news is we're trending towards where we need to be versus getting farther down into the exceptional drought range. So across the lower Russian River, we experience fires every year. And those fires that we experience historically, our top 3 causes of fires are debris burning, people doing the right thing the wrong way, campfires, and electrical. And I think that the gist of a lot of people's concerns tonight are those campfires. Historically, that's been both recreational and from the unsheltered, but rest assured that we are working closely with all of our allied agencies here in the county, as well as Supervisor Hopkins, to address solutions to that threat. Because in the unsheltered environment that folks are living in, there's a warmth and a providing of food to sustain themselves. So that's where we're working together collectively across the county and our state partners here to figure out ways that we can minimize the threat of wildfire as we get deeper into fire season. So I'll let Supervisor Hopkins perhaps speak a little bit more to that, but basically we had Supervisor Hopkins, let me know if I'm overstepping, but basically we had an early meeting here, I believe 2 weeks ago, with agencies across the spectrum, from the Sheriff's Office to Health Services, to our partners with Sonoma County Fire District, to really lean in and figure out things outside the box to address this problem. Because campfires during fire season, not on an individual's own property or not in an organized campground, are illegal, and they pose a threat to the community. And we are leaning in to make sure that that, if it's predictable, it's preventable. So we're working with our partners to figure out the best course forward to make sure that those fires are not a threat to the lower Russian River communities as we progress deeper into fire season. Pip, looks like you're muted again.
Muted.
Oh, sorry. I keep muting myself because I have dogs here and they, sorry. Thanks, Ben. Any questions or comments from the council? I know I have one thing, but anyone else from the council?
I'm wondering, Pip, if we should have Cyndi do her presentation as well, since she's also fire.
Oh, yeah.
Chief Cyndi, and then questions to both of them so that we get all the fire questions together, because it may be that her presentation will answer some of the questions.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thanks for having us, and just really excited to connect deeper with our Russian River area residents and our active groups. So thank you for having me. I think I couldn't speak it any clearer than what Chief Nicholls said. We have a very intimate professional relationship with our fire and law enforcement resources in this community. we are all truly engaged with each other. It isn't that we're all working in a vacuum. So I just want you all to know that there is that really dynamic relationship between our organizations. And just for those of you that are on tonight that may not know the nuances of what CalFire's role is and what our fire district's role is. So I'm the fire marshal and division chief for the Sonoma County Fire District. And our fire district is essentially a consolidated fire district that the previous Russian River Fire District came into back in 2019, I think now. And so with that being said, we have a larger fire district and a broader scope, broader area to protect. But we also have a lot more resources and enhanced services that have been able to be seated in the community. So, but with that said, our responsibility is 365, 24/7 emergency response within the fire district. That's for everything from a medical aid to a fire, to a hazardous material spill, sort of it runs the gamut. However, when we're talking about fires that either start in the vegetation in the lower Russian River area, which is what we call the state responsibility area, when a fire starts in the vegetation and or if a structure fire moves into the vegetation, CalFire has the ultimate authority on cause and origin and ultimately suppression with all of our resources combined to put that fire out. And so just to sort of paint that in case anybody doesn't totally understand that, but what you can take out of that is that we clearly work very intertwined and hand in hand. And so we come with a common voice, and what Chief Nicholls touched on tonight was statistical data that's really important for us, because I think some of the concerns that we have, and we all share them. I live in the wildland urban interface. I live in the burn scar. I share all of these sort of painful and uncomfortable journeys that everybody's going through. But what we just have to keep in mind is that, you know, all we can do is be educated, be prepared, be ready. And I think just with that emotional piece of this, it's really easy for us to say, well, this has to be related to the unhoused. And, you know, in all reality, the chief talked about some of that statistical data, and we just have to sort of take that for what it's worth. So again, thanks for having me. And again, I just really rely on Chief Nicholls as sort of the expert in the room, and appreciate that we're able to have this time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call myself with a question, and it's something you were just touching on. I know in this household, we do jump to the conclusion that when we hear about a fire, that it is started by a homeless person or it's in an encampment somewhere, and it's never good to assume. And in this case, when we do assume that, it creates baggage in one direction, and maybe we're ignoring an issue in another when we're making those assumptions. Do you have any like data or information about what percent is started in what way that would help? And I would also encourage everyone not to assume a fire started because of X reason before we actually know the cause. So I don't know if either one of you has any information on that, or what you think about people jumping to the conclusion one way or the other.
Sure. So last year we did see an increase in campfire caused fires in what we call Battalion 11, which is from basically the coast into the west side of Lake Sonoma and everything north of the Russian River, parts of Monterey and Forestville, but the bulk of it is the lower Russian River there. So there was an increase in the campfires that we responded to. I'll put to you that the average campfire that we respond to, that's because someone saw a fire and called 911. So that campfire may not have left the ring, that it may not have escaped and actually burned vegetation, but it's a threat and it's an illegal fire. So we extinguished that fire. So my ask at the end of fire season last year was that individuals that see a fire and know that it's not a righteous fire, or believe that it's not a legal fire, you have the ultimate right to call 911, and the fire department will come out and investigate and determine whether or not it's a legal fire or not. And if it's not, I've given direction to my personnel, be it warming, cooking, or otherwise. If it's not on the individual's property and it's not in an organized campground, we have to take into account the threat to the community, and that fire will be extinguished. What I alluded to earlier is Supervisor Hopkins drew together the agencies across the county spectrum here to figure out how we solve the problem maybe outside of a traditional approach. Because obviously, even though it's an illegal fire, an arrest is not going to be made for that fire because it's a misdemeanor. And in the current system, we're just not going down that road. And is there a more effective way that we can get a change in behavior rather than a criminal route? So that's something that we're working on across the agencies here to address that. But in the meantime, as I said before, and I'll say it again, if you see a fire and you believe it's a fire that is either a wildfire or an illegal fire, please call it in so that we can address it, because the stats I was just talking to you about are based off of the folks that have called 911. And there's a lot of people that say, well, I see fires all the time, but I don't bother calling it in. Well, if you don't call it in, then we don't know that's there, and we can't address that fire. So the other takeaway that I kind of glazed over, I missed earlier in the conversation, was that because we're at where we're at with the drought, historic fires that may not have become significant fires have a much greater chance of doing that. And we saw that earlier this spring with the 21 acres that we had out on the Alpine fire in Monterey. That's a timber fire that historically we wouldn't have had a fire of that size, because we would have had the rainfall to keep that fire in check. So it's extremely important that the community, and I know that everybody listening tonight are already in that vein, but being super vigilant in not only what other people are doing, but more importantly, what you're doing. Because as I mentioned, campfires are the top cause, but there's plenty of other causes for fires. So, in the past, we've had experiences where people have improperly disposed ashes. And so when we have vacationers or we have people that are coming and going, if they're not careful of disposing those ashes when they're done visiting for the weekend or the week when they're here, those have caused fires. Vehicles are a very common cause of fires, be it mechanical issues from themselves or traffic collisions. So 99% of our fires here in Sonoma County in a normal year, excluding the lightning series that we had, 99% of the fires are human caused. And so that's where, if it's predictable, it's preventable. Fire Marshal Foreman and I and some of our other partner agencies here last year, mowing is a regular cause of fires, more so out in the central part of the county, central and eastern portions of the county. But again, if it's predictable, it's preventable. And so people are doing the right thing the wrong way. Lawn mowers, be it riding or push mowers, are not designed or intended to be used in dry, cured vegetation. They're for manicured lawns. And so when they strike rocks when they're out there working, they have a buildup of chaff on the deck, and the fire gets started on the mower. Somebody's trying to do the right thing. They're putting in that defensible space, right? But in the meantime, they cause a fire that may threaten the home that they're trying to protect in the first place. So it's being careful, especially with equipment use. Lawnmowers are part of the equation, but be it welding, grinding, running chainsaws, we have to be very careful on those critical fire weather days with what we're doing out there in the wildland in your neighborhoods, because that's the extreme threat that we have with human caused fires.
And then Chief, I would almost jump in and say, I think we keep talking about be careful on those, high fire danger days. It's almost, in this day and age, be careful no matter what time of year it is, just because we're sort of getting to that place where there almost isn't an end to fire season. We're seeing, fires that are happening in, green grass year round almost. So I would almost say that's perfect advice, but I almost want to just tag on there that it's almost year round. We have to be concerned about this stuff anymore.
Great, thanks. Any other council members have a
I'm
question?
finding that quite a few of these questions up here are asking about enforcement and homeless services response, and we have yet to hear from those representatives. So I wonder if people could make sure that their questions at this point are just for the fire folks, and then we can get to the to Lieutenant Duke and Tina Rivera and Paul Ombudsman from the solutions for specifically the homeless encampments. Maybe we should get to them so that we have a fuller picture before jumping into all the questions.
Okay. So, and I think that's a great suggestion.
Tough one.
On just on what Ben and Cyndi were talking about, does any other, because I did go, does anyone else have a comment or question? And then we'll have the other guys speak.
I do.
Yeah, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Nicholls and Chief Foreman. It seemed like last year there was a lot of fires that were ignited. I guess it was right around the beginning of the fire season along the corridor, the 101. And it almost seemed like there was maybe some arson, people driving around starting fires from their vehicles up in Healdsburg and down along the 101 corridor. Was that true? I never really found out for sure if that was happening or not, because it just seemed like it was a lot of weird fires starting, and we didn't need it.
So Tony, I'm smiling because people associate multiple fires that it has to be arson. That the stereotypical deal we'll get is multiple reports of fires, and resources are reporting 6 fires when they arrive at scene, and everybody goes straight to arson because it's got to be arson if it's multiple fires, right? But in this day and age, with the emission standards that we have on vehicles, catalytic converters do a great job of taking particulates out of the emissions from vehicles, right? But they're just like any other mechanical device. And what happens is they will become occluded and blocked. It doesn't allow that heat to go through like it's supposed to, and it actually melts, and it catastrophically fails. And so as the vehicle is driving down the road, the driver will notice a loss of power or start running rough, and all of a sudden it's running fine again, and they keep on driving like there's no issue with the vehicle. Well, what they don't know is that the muffler had become blocked or was becoming blocked, and that molten material was expelled out through the exhaust pipe. And there all of a sudden are 6 fires down Highway 101. The Cotati grade, if you're paying attention in a normal summer, the Cotati grade, one side or the other, if it's southbound on the north side and it's northbound on the south side, experience multiple fire events because of that exact scenario. We have another common occurrence with vehicles hauling trailers, that if people haven't secured the chains correctly, the chain actually drags on the road, and we have sparks that then are cast into the roadside vegetation and start fires. Another great one is vehicles get a flat tire, especially on a trailer where they might not feel it as much as they do on the regular tires of their vehicle. And they're driving down the road, not necessarily checking their mirrors as often as they should, and throwing this rooster tail of sparks again into the surrounding vegetation. So where I'm going with it is there's lots of vehicle caused fires that we strive really hard with the One Less Spark campaign to make sure that folks that are hauling trailers or folks that are traveling are checking the tire pressure on their tires, making sure they're ready for the trip. But we're still going to have those vehicle caused fires. Arson is a cause of fires, right? That's a human cause of fires, but there are a lot more examples of accidentally caused fires that occur every year throughout the state that get lumped into suspicious fires by the general public just because they're out of the ordinary. So the ask early on I can't remember who put that out. I think it was Pip, that, don't jump to the worst case scenario right off the bat. CalFire has dedicated law enforcement officers that their job in life is to determine the origin and cause for all the wildland fires that we respond to. And they're really good at their job. And so know that they are working around the clock to make sure that they have their finger on the pulse on what's causing fires. And if there's somebody that either civilly, if it's an accidental fire, but it's a civilly responsible fire, that they're held responsible, or if it's criminal in nature, then it's going to be a criminal investigation.
All right, thanks, Ben. So I'm gonna ask I'm gonna move to the public now on questions related to fire. And remember, we're gonna get to enforcement in a minute. So if your question is related to enforcement, we have folks that are gonna talk about that issue. So if you have questions specifically about fire-related issues, now's the time to ask those questions.
Chair, Vesta does have her hand up.
Oh, okay, I didn't see it, Vesta.
Because I do trash cleanup on River Road, one of my biggest concerns is cigarette butts. And there is a lot of redwood needles and dry grass that's along the side of the road. And I'm always finding cigarette butts literally laying on top of those dried redwood needles and dried grass. And I know at some point the county comes along and mows the edges of the roads, but leaves the dry material. There's also dry material that has been left from tree trimming along the side of the road. Those cigarette butts flying out I wonder how many of the fires are caused by those cigarette butts, and is it possible to do more year-round cleanup that's down to that level of getting rid of the fire hazards on the side of the roads where cigarette butts would be thrown out of a window?
So Vesta, you bring up a great point. So cigarettes historically, cigarettes causing fires historically were an easy go-to. So much so that the United States Forest Service invested quite a bit of money into researching the actual parameters for which a cigarette can actually be a competent ignition source for a wildland fire. And it was found that they're not as responsible for fires as we would like, as we believed prior to that research being done. Not to say that it's okay to flick the cigarette butts out the windows, right? I mean, whole different level of littering and not taking care of our environment. But as a whole, while cigarettes do cause fires, typically the temperatures have to be above 80 degrees. The relative humidity has to be very low, down into the teens. And it has to have a little bit of wind, but not a lot of wind. And so there's a lot of things that really have to line up. The cigarette butt, the glowing end of the cigarette has to contact the ground. So like I said, where they have been responsible for fires and they will be responsible for fires, they are not one of the top causes of our fires here in the county.
Great. Kyra?
Yeah, I just want to say real briefly, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your guys' presentation. I really appreciate it. In representing my constituents, there's a lot of fear out here because of the dry conditions and a lot of fires that happened down in Monterey. I understand there was a suspect and all that kind of stuff, and we'll get to the enforcement part in a minute. But it always begs the question. I get calls a lot about, well, what about this fire? What was the cause? How do we know what the cause was? And then the rumor mill just goes rampant. Is there some transparency, a way that there can be some reporting from the fire agencies of maybe monthly, these fires were caused by this, or, whenever you have that data available, so that the public can be aware of what the truth really is? Is this really caused by, people's carelessness? Was this a lightning strike? Was this, something like that? Because without the knowledge and without knowing anything, people just go wild. And, people's insurances are being dropped and you can't get fire insurance. So there's a lot of fear of property owners out here, and that's why they're all talking. So thank you.
Kyra, I totally get it. There's a lot, you're not the first, nor will you be the last. What I can speak to is the fact that any ongoing investigation, be it civil or criminal, we cannot, as law enforcement officers, speak to that investigation before it's concluded. And if we did so, not only would we be jeopardizing the case, but we would be speaking out of turn because all the facts have not been put together and a cause determined. So that's why we don't share that information on ongoing investigations, because it's not appropriate for us to share that information. And that's actually covered underneath California law. Once the causes are determined and it's been released, we have no problem sharing that data. And that's why I'm able to speak to the fact of our causes that we're having. You know, the top causes last year: campfire, vehicle, and electrical. I mean, you guys live in a heavily forested area, and there's a whole lot of power lines out there, right? And so that's why electrical is one of your top causes. Luckily on the river, we haven't had those wind-driven fires like we've had on the east side of the county, but it's still a threat to us. And so when our folks are out there, my expectation to my battalion chiefs and my engine companies is that we're looking up while we're driving as well to make sure that we don't have any dead trees that are threatening those power lines and pose the risk of coming down. You know, the age-old deal that I give my folks is that when you have a Douglas fir growing out of the side of the hill at a 45-degree angle, hanging over the top of power lines, the only way that's going down is through those power lines. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be next year, but it very well could be. So we are working aggressively with PG&E and the other outfits that we've determined causes for fires to make sure that we don't have those fires in the future.
Right. Can I ask a follow-up question to Kyra's question? Because I know you said you can release that information after an investigation has been concluded, but where can we find that information? And this all kind of goes back to this pent-up fear out here right now, and without actual having an easy place to go find out what's really going on, what caused this, what caused that, people are going to read into things, and it does maybe have people have higher anxiety than they need to, or not enough anxiety that they should. So is there a place where that is posted? And if there's
not regularly, there's not a public source to gather that information from. I'd be happy to work with Supervisor Hopkins' office or groups out there, but you know, my anxiety for the group is that need to know versus nice to know. CalFire's mission is to contain 95% of our fires to 10 acres or less, and we do that across the board. So the 57 fires that you experienced in the Russian in Battalion 11 last year, which includes the lower Russian River area, those fires did not get greater than 10 acres. So while you experience fires, I think that the bigger takeaway is that we all, me included and my personnel, we all have a good chunk of PTSI right now in our core from the fires that we've experienced in the last several years. But what we need to remind ourselves, and what we're working on with internally and with prescribed fire practitioners across the county, is that fire is not bad. Fire in the wrong conditions is horrible, right? And so we need to work extra hard to introduce good fire and to make sure that we don't panic every time that smoke gets in the air, because every fire is not the Kincaid fire, it's not the Wallbridge fire. And so trust in the fact that your firefighters, both my firefighters and firefighters from across the county, including Sonoma County Fire District, are aggressively attacking those fires, and we're dealing with the individuals that are responsible for those fires. We're happy to share the cause information where we can to help build that community knowledge. As I mentioned earlier, not one of our top causes, but I know that Airbnbs have been a subject of conversation across the county, and ash disposal, be it fireplace ashes or be it barbecue ashes, have caused fires and will cause fires. And so we need to work aggressively with communities to make sure that where we identify a trend in what's causing fires, where can we get out in front of that and change that behavior so that we can hopefully prevent those fires downstream?
And Chief, I'll throw another sort of common cause that we deal with, and this definitely affects the lower Russian River area, is we're getting into spring and spring cleaning, and we're going to all start taking better care of the wood on our houses and things like that, and decks and stuff like that. So staining, discarded staining rags is a huge common cause for us. But and it sorts to start to ramp up from about spring up until, you know, about midsummer, and when it starts to get really warm. So that's just another thing to throw out there, is just be really careful about how you're dealing with your oily rags, because that's a very common cause for us. So I just have to give a standing ovation to Chief Nicholls. He nailed it with his, I think, just letting everybody know how things are, what's happening, what's going on, what we can, what we can't do. And I just feel really blessed to have him in our unit. He's really amazing, and all of his crews are amazing. So thank you, Chief. You just, for me, as if I was just a lay person, you hit it out of the park explaining what's going on. And certainly as a fire professional, I just admire how you presented this to the public. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move to the public comments or questions. Remember, this is related to fire specifically, not in enforcement or potentially law enforcement issues. Jason, you want to go down the list in order of?
Yep, and I'll remind all of our folks, we do have a 2-minute comment limit, and when you're 30 seconds away from that 2 minutes, I will put a clock up so you'll know. Diana, you had your hand up? Could you unmute yourself, Diana?
Diana, are you there?
Okay.
All right, and maybe we can come back to
on.
Diana. Let's go to Kiri.
Yeah.
Hi, Kiri. Hi, Kiri.
Sorensen?
Yeah. I live next to Bohemian Grove, at the bottom of a hill of overgrown mess. Having studied sudden oak death, I look around and the fuel that is here is just absolutely incredible. Now on my hillside myself, I've worked on all the small stuff I possibly can, and it's the trees I can't get. And I've got around $60,000 or $70,000 worth of tree lopping to do on my property to reduce my fire risk. And there's no way I can afford that. I've got the septic issue coming up, what we just talked about. And I'm wondering, is there any way that we can, homeowners can possibly get grants to take care of the wood on our properties? Is there any plans to, say, get mass quantities of goats to have come across our hillsides and feed this stuff off? The hill above me is completely overgrown. I've got to take my hats off right now and really, really, really thank the fire personnel in our area for what and how they have taken care of the fires in our area. But still, I live with complete trepidation. This is an emergency. Is there any way we can get our county government to declare an emergency and get us grants to take care of this? That's my question.
Oh, that sounded like a little baby. So Ben or Cyndi, do you have a response to what Kiri's talking about in terms of grants that are available? And maybe Lynda, you can jump in on that one too, and maybe brick grants are part of the answer here as well.
Well, I think we could all jump in with comments. I'll let Supervisor Hopkins maybe speak to some of the county funded grants, but and Chief Nicholls, obviously there's state grants, there's CalFire grants, there's RCD, Resource Conservation District, they've got some grant money on the table right now. I want to say to the tune of $3.3 million that could address and specifically calls out private property. So not so much like a roadside fuel reduction, but this is geared toward people that have private property that could implement either grazing or fuel reduction or shaded fuel breaks or prescribed burning or whatever it may be. There's some money on the table right now within the county, and I'm not the one to speak to that. I just particularly know about this one because I've sort of reached out on it a little bit, and it just came out, I want to say a week or two ago. So maybe Supervisor Hopkins can allude to that, and then the county programs as well.
Yeah, so there are a few different programs, and I actually was just talking at the board meeting on Tuesday about how we need to do a better job of warehousing them all so that there's like one website that you can go to and you can find out which programs you're eligible for. So we do have the Ag Preservation and Open Space District program, which is really geared towards kind of protecting communities. And Chief Nicholls has actually been absolutely instrumental, as has Sonoma County Fire District and Cyndi Foreman, in looking at providing some advice to local communities about where shaded fuel breaks should go, kind of what they should look like. Because a lot of times people come and they say, hey, I really want to do something to protect my community. And then they actually just sort of want to draw the line right around their community, which actually isn't necessarily the most effective way of protecting. And so that's why we bring in, subject matter experts like Chief Nicholls to say, hey, from a firefighting perspective, actually want to look at this on the ridge top, right? And sort of places where we can actually hold a line and sort of create these barriers where firefighters could have a chance to actually stop a fire at a particular point. So if you want to do this as part of a neighborhood or kind of community effort, would be happy to connect you to our Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District team, like Kim Batchelder, who could then provide potential technical assistance to say, hey, what would be the best for the entire area? If you're looking at individual sort of opportunities, I would have to actually check to see if the BRIC grant includes your area, but the BRIC grant is a huge deal. And this was the, I think it stands for Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. I got that acronym right. And it's the $37 million from the federal government, specifically to look at how do we support a whole range, everything from home hardening into sort of more landscape level fire risk reduction and mitigation. And then another opportunity is actually through our Skype program, which previously was used for solar installation. And so it's actually still called the Sonoma County Energy Independence Program, but actually now you can use that for home hardening too. So if you, for instance, you want to swap out a wooden deck for something that was fireproof, or you wanted to get those spark guards installed on your vents, those kinds of things could be utilized. And I believe you can actually use that for big scale vegetation management. It's not the kind of thing you'd want to use for like mowing your lawn, but for taking out trees, that would also be eligible. And that's kind of a loan that then goes on your property tax bill, but we basically provide the financing for it through the county. So those are a few different options, but also Carrie, feel free to text me or email me. And I can, put you into contact with some of those programs I mentioned. I know that was a lot of information to dump on you all at once.
Yeah, and thumbs up to Ag and Open Space for that. The process is really helpful and informative, and they walk you through the whole thing with CalFire and et cetera. So if you can figure out how to take advantage of it for a community, it's well worth it. All right. Who's up next, Jason?
We got Kari Morrissey.
All right.
Kari.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, mute that. I have to tell you guys that I think that mute the TV. I have to tell you guys that this meeting is really disappointing. And the reason that it's so disappointing is because we never get a direct answer to our problems. Our problems out here in Monte Rio don't have anything to do with oily rags. They don't have anything to do with lawnmowers. We have had more than 30 homeless encampment fires last year. We've had numerous suspected arson fires this year. And my question for you, and I never get a direct answer, and I'm giving you an opportunity, and I'm asking you to give me a direct answer. What are you doing to help the problem with homeless encampment fires? And I'm not asking for the answer of we're working with our sister agencies. I want a detailed answer that tells us exactly what you're doing, exactly what the sister agencies are doing, and how this problem may begin to improve. We have been attending these meetings and we have heard the same generalizations from every single one of you. The situation hasn't changed. The situation has not improved. And as far as we can tell, nothing significant has actually been done. I also want to point out, Captain Nicholls, that negligent arson is not a misdemeanor. Negligent arson is a felony. So we would like to know if the homeless people who are setting encampment fires can be arrested for the felony of negligent arson. Please begin to answer our direct questions. Our community is in crisis. Thank you.
Carrie, I understand your frustration. Totally get it. There is no such thing as negligent arson. Arson is a crime and it is a felony. Causing a campfire is not arson. Igniting a campfire is not arson. If that fire escapes and it burns something other than the campfire, that is under the Public Resources Code 452, which is a wobbler, and it is not an automatic arson. It is not an automatic felony. So let's be clear on what constitutes arson and what doesn't. We had a preliminary conversation with all the agencies here in the county. It is still in development. We don't have a final resolution for you on the outside of the box approach that we're going to take with our partner agencies here in the county. What we are doing proactively right now is putting out all those fires when you report them. So there is a approach that we're taking with the community to make sure that you guys are safe. We are aggressively extinguishing all those fires that are not allowed. We are, I can't stress it enough, we are working together. Some of the options that we just discussed a couple weeks ago was working with our homeless advocates, our unsheltered advocates, to introduce alternate means to stay warm, to maintain warmth, and to feed themselves that don't involve a campfire. So there are approaches that are being talked about. We will be talking with the district attorney's office here shortly about what can and cannot be prosecuted in the current system with the current criminal justice system that we have to work with. But understand that the sheriff's office, ourselves, and our partners across the board are doing everything in the current rules of engagement that we have to address the threat to the community and to make sure that you guys can sleep safe at night.
Thank you.
If I could, through the chair, just to add, I want to also acknowledge your frustration, Carrie, and also thank you for your leadership. And, one of the things that I offered to you was to expand the program that you have in terms of supporting landowners to install cameras on their private property to make sure that they can monitor their property effectively and ensure that homeless encampments aren't starting. And so I think that that's also one of the strategies that we discussed at the meeting was how can we actually send out a physical mail piece that has information about how you enforce no trespassing, sort of what responsibilities and rights property owners have, and how can we support property owners in taking steps to protect their property. I also did want to emphasize that we are working actively on coordinating a mapping system so that we could actually track the individuals who are part of those encampments that are entering the woods on either private or public property. And we do have agreement across the departments and agencies that this would be very effective in allowing us to coordinate in real time, kind of mitigating any kind of fire risk from these encampments. So that is underway and ongoing. And we've had one meeting. And actually the other thing that I want to mention is that I believe the Department of Health Services has formally committed to inviting our fire partners to attend monthly meetings that are part of their kind of on the ground implementation of prioritization of encampments. This would actually allow us for the first time ever to apply a fire risk lens to the triage that the county does. We never have enough resources to address all of the encampments that are everywhere in Sonoma County, but we now have the ability to work with our subject matter experts to say, hey, this one represents a very severe fire risk. And so, how do we get that up the priority list so that we can get those wraparound resources deployed? The other thing that I wanted to mention is that for the first time ever, I believe, the county has moved forward with actually identifying and purchasing a location where we can relocate folks to in the lower Russian River. So we're moving forward with the purchase of George's Hideaway, which is something that's been a long time coming.
Thank you.
So Chair, we don't have any hands raised, but we have a question I think that Supervisor Hopkins wanted to answer live from Cynthia Strecker.
Okay.
If I'm correct, Supervisor. And the question is, what is the status of the controversy between CalFire and the Board of Soups as to whether or not further development construction can be allowed on roads that are only one lane and therefore do not allow for ingress or egress?
Yep. So I want to start off by saying that the Board of Supervisors has no beef with CalFire, and we love working with Chief Nicholls and all of the other folks that we work with at CalFire. And this is really about the Board of Forestry, which has proposed basically, they originally were proposing essentially eliminating all development in anywhere that did not have a defined fire safe road, which has a sort of certain minimum width. And they were essentially saying that if you were going to even put a granny unit on your property at the end of a road, you would actually have to improve it to, this X feet width for the entirety of all the way out to your property and your granny unit. And so there is some tension between local government, because we in local government actually do like to work with our fire agency partners when we're looking at development standards, but also recognize that there are benefits, say, to having an ADU or on-site farm worker housing for farm workers, for instance, in some of our rural areas that do not have roads that meet the minimum state requirements. So my understanding is that there still is not actually a final decision that has been issued on that matter yet. So we're still kind of waiting to hear. And also Sonoma County had proposed a fire safe road standards that then sort of got caught up in this change of sort of protocol and rulemaking. And so we have not actually received a final decision on our local proposal that went to the state either. So it's still up in the air, but it's a great question. Just, Board of Forestry, and then local governments, the rural counties representatives of California, RCRC, and the California State Association of Counties, CSAC, have been very active on this issue because it does affect local development.
Right. Thanks. I'm reading through some of these comments in here. I'd just like to say something. I did participate in a meeting a couple of weeks that the folks are talking about. And I just want to reassure everyone, and I don't usually attend these kinds of meetings, but you can get I got a genuine sense that there was no territorialism between these different groups of people that are working on different things. Everyone there wanted to figure out a solution and how they could make it work between different departments. And, you got a state level department, county level department, and everyone. So for whatever that's worth, I was there, I saw it, and people are in fact trying to figure out how to solve this problem. The other thing is that there's two things that have been out in the lower Russian River that have been problems for quite a while: homelessness and fires. These two things are now colliding together, and they're both very complicated issues. And we do at least have people that are trying to come together right now to create solutions that are going to make us all safer. Now I'm going to get off my soapbox. So, Jason, who do we have?
Could we move to Lieutenant Duke and,
we
and some
can,
of these other participants, because I think that people really need to hear from them before they start asking more questions.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So why don't we move to the Sonoma County Sheriff, and we have, remember, it is Tim is gonna speak on their behalf right now.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you and good evening. Appreciate you asking myself to come and represent the Sheriff's Office. First of all, I'd just like to address what Chief Nicholls, as well as Cyndi, had mentioned. The fire investigators do a great job as far as the fire aspect. From the Sheriff's Office perspective, we have one And when our staffing levels allow us, we'll have 2 detectives that are dedicated to them for the enforcement portion. But they're the lead, they're the experts in this field. As Chief Nicholls had mentioned, particularly with the origin of the fire and where and how it started. So we just try to complement them as a liaison and work with the district attorney's office and them as far as anything we can do. But I assure you, they do a fantastic job. So jumping from the fire to homeless, because I think that's what a lot of people may have questions about. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions. So what I'm going to do is try to get an abbreviated version of how it affects us with some limitations and some of the things we can do. So there was a case decision that came out of Idaho, of all places. It's called Boise versus Martin. And that decision affects most of our Western states. That decision has changed the way we deal with homeless and the type of people that are considered homeless. So if I can just step in and like I said, I'm trying to reduce everything I have into abbreviated version here. So first of all, when we come across a homeless encampment, which generally is estimated about 5 people or more can be considered an encampment, it's kind of a rule of thumb. We want to establish jurisdiction. Is it in the state? Is it in the county? Is it a county park? Or is it in the state parks? Once we're able to do that, that would be a public property. So from there, we have to distinguish, okay, public or private. So let's say hypothetically, it's public property. We'll say it belongs to the county. Now, from a law enforcement perspective, we get called on this encampment. And the only action we can take at that time is an on-view criminal act, a probation or parole violation, or if they have a warrant in the system. So when the deputies go out and they contact these people in the public places, this is kind of the limitations they have as far as taking immediate action. So with that immediate action, if a arrest occurs due to a crime or probation, parole, or warrant, the deputy will potentially take them into custody, and then we have to collect all their property, potentially tow their vehicles. So it's something that we do. We do it often. I know there was one that was just dealt with the other day. It is cumbersome for the deputies because we don't have a lot of deputies out there to do this. It takes hours by the time we can get them transported to the office. The county jail, inventory their property, potentially tow a vehicle, and then write the report. And sometimes we'll do that just to get them off the street and maybe try to get them some type of help. But the bottom line is it takes a toll on our resources. But we do it, and it's quite often that we do it when we can. So that's public property. On private property, either we have to have a citizen's arrest form from someone present there, or what we ask for, which a lot of you can do, is what's called a trespass action request form. The trespass action request form allows us to act pretty much so like an agent for you. So if you're not around and someone's on your property, we can actually, if someone calls, okay, hypothetical, you have a 3-acre parcel and you're in town shopping and your neighbor sees someone trespassing onto your property and kind of setting up a tent and some things like this, as far as maybe trying to establish a encampment on your property or your neighbor's property. At that point, if we get a call and there's a trespass action request form on file, we will then have permission to go onto the property and deal with this person. And if they are in fact trespassing, then they'll be subject to arrest. So those are a couple things I think that can be addressed as far as the private property. Again, either a citizen's arrest, it's a misdemeanor, or the trespass action request form, which allows us to, in some ways, act as an agent on your behalf to go ahead and contact the person. You basically give us permission to go on your property for someone that's trespassing. So if in fact we get to going back to the public property now, if in fact we don't have an on-view crime, a probation or parole violation, or a warrant that we can actually arrest a person for, then in most cases on public land, we'll actually contact the Department of Health Services, and they will establish services. And now these guidelines have been established by the Boise versus Martin and some of the amendments to that case. So we have limitations on things that we can do in public, as I mentioned. So Department of Health Services generally comes in and they'll start offering services. Once that's established and we try to build a rapport, we try to get them, say hypothetically it's a housing issue, we'll try to get them housed if we can. If maybe it's something, you know, a maintenance issue with their vehicle that's a very, very low cost, there may potentially be some funds there to assist in that process. So the goal is to try to help them out and get them on their feet. And, you know, we just don't want to move them from point A to point B, which I'm sure you see out there the river quite often. You may see a trailer or an RV that was at one location, and then the next day they're 2 miles down the road at another location. What we want to do is provide them services, and that's why we have Department of Health Services come in and try to offer those services. Please remember too, a lot of these people that we're dealing with, some of them have just had bad luck. Some of them have addictions, and some of them have mental illnesses. For those addictions, some of them may be self-induced through illegal drugs, and some of them could have been from prescription drugs due to maybe an injury or something they had in their life. So a lot of these people aren't always able to function at a high capacity. So helping them along with Department of Health, trying to provide them with services, trying to have a patient deputy that can work with them to navigate them through to get them help. All these things are what we try to do when we can and we have the time. So again, I could go on for quite some time about some of these kind of guidelines we have and certain things we can and can't do, but I think it's more important to hear from you as the public and then try to answer some of those questions. So based on what I told you, again, just remember a lot of that came from Boise versus Martin decision. And then again, some adjustments to that case itself. So with that, I think it'd be best maybe to turn it over to some questions and see if hopefully I can provide some answers.
And we will do that. First to council, any questions on what Tim was just talking about? No one in the council? All right, public. Jason?
Yes, we have hand raised from Karen.
Karen, is this Rianito Karen?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Karen.
Hey there. Actually, I lied. It's Robin, but I'm on Karen's computer.
Oh, hi, Robin.
All right. So I'll be brief. This was one of those, you can't make this story up. So I was on my way home from work last summer, and we were either in a high or critically high fire status. And I noticed smoke coming up right by the river on the hillside that leads to the river. And so I pulled off and went down underneath the tunnel, and some guys had set up, you know, tents and they were camping. But what I was there was about the fire. And I said, you know, it's really high fire time, etc. They said, yeah, and I kid you not, you can't make this up. They were within 20 feet of the sign that Park and Rec has there that says no fires.
And no overnight camping.
Oh, and no overnight camping. But at that moment, I cared about the fires. So I left and I called a Russian River station, and they said, I'm so sorry, that is a CalFire. So I called CalFire. They treated me lovely on the phone, explained to me though that warming and cooking fires were okay. I honestly don't know how a fire would know if it was for warming, cooking, or not. And and they were kind. They went down and checked on it to make sure it wasn't out. Anyway, the bottom line, and then of course Park and Rec had to come and clean it up the next day. Can you help me understand how that works, where if it's not okay for some of us to have fires, but some too? Oh, time up. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Robin,
All right,
I think
that's-
I accidentally muted your question earlier, so hopefully it was you that was asking, but somebody else, if it wasn't you, it was somebody else on the radar as well. So that was a misunderstanding by my company officer, and thanks to the Friends of Rio Nito that shared that with Fire Marshal Foreman, who immediately shared it with me. And a subsequent follow-up to my battalion chief and the company officer that responded to that. He is now very aware that that was not a legal fire and that won't happen again. So I apologize on that. That was a company officer that was not aware that the warming and cooking fire is a descriptor that is discussed in other legal fires. And that's where he was confused. And he is now well aware. And we had that conversation. I drove by the next day and looked at the road sign. Actually, the battalion chief, Paul Fleckenstein, drove by the next day and took a picture of that sign. And we had a conversation with the company officer that that was indeed not a legal warming or cooking fire. So I apologize for that, because that was right after the Lower Mac meeting, Lower Russian River Mac meeting last fall, where I gave specific directions to call 911 or to report the fire. And then here you did that within days of that meeting, and you had that experience. So know that that will not happen again from our Hilton station there on the river.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. I think Carrie has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Yes, if I come across a homeless encampment out in the woods when I'm doing my hikes, what will you guys do to remove those homeless people from the forest before the fire starts? I think that's really the issue. The issue isn't, as the fire department, we come and put out fires. The issue is, when we come across homeless encampments, what can we do to make sure that those folks are relocated immediately so that the fire never starts?
Tina, is that a question you could answer?
Thank you.
Sorry, you've been waiting patiently.
Hi, Tina Rivera, Director for the Department of Health Services. The Health Department is the encampment arm for the county. And our HEART team, which stands for Homeless Encampment Access and Resource Team, it's a cohort of our interdepartmental multidisciplinary team, which you've been hearing about, all of these departments coming together, doing this work or coming together around the issues with respect to encampments, with respect to fire danger, things of that nature. One of the things that we do is we have a weekly operational and encampment meeting, which we will be inviting our fire partners to address fire, which is one of the priorities when we're discussing encampment clearing and enforcement. What we would do is you would contact our IMDT or HEART team. You would alert us. What's going to be really critical, as Supervisor Hopkins has mentioned, one of the things that has been going on is we get a phone call or we get an email with respect to where these encampments are located. This mapping tool that Supervisor Hopkins has mentioned, I believe, is going to really truly be a game changer, because we'll be able to access this data and this information quicker. It's going to be more in real time. We'll be able to prioritize these encampments more quickly. We'll be able to deploy our teams quicker. Of course, resources is also going to be a a thing that we're constantly looking at, because we only have so many individuals to go around the entire county. But we've been also on the back end discussing partnerships with our city partners and our other community-based organizational partners to increase the capacity of our teams in our unincorporated areas and also throughout our cities to help us as we integrate our teams and address these encampments. So what we would do is we would, as we come together, prioritize these encampments for clearance and enforcement. And that is what we do on a weekly basis. It may not be that day. It just simply depends on where that encampment would fit with respect to the prioritization list. We have a set of metrics that we discuss, how serious that encampment may be, the dangers, the safety risks, the fire risk that rises to the occasion. And that's how we would prioritize that, the number of individuals in that encampment. All those things are criteria that we look at with respect to deploying. Now, one of the things I will share with you, sometimes it's easier for us to deploy 2 of our team members to an encampment where there's only a couple of people, because we'd like to address a smaller encampment. It's easier to really engage individuals before that encampment blows up. So we really like to take a look at, dealing with those smaller issues before they become larger issues. So we really try to do that, especially when we have the capacity to do it. So I hope that answers your question.
So just to follow up, Tina, you mentioned two potential places to call INDT and Heart Team.
Mm-hmm.
Can you post those numbers?
Yes, I sure can. Let me put these
in the chat. And are you basically saying that we should have those numbers on our refrigerators just like we have fire department and sheriff?
Absolutely. You should have the number and this email address I'm going to give you. Have it posted on your refrigerator, put it in your car, put it in your wallet, wherever you need to carry it, and ensure that you have it with you so that you can access it whenever you need to.
All right, great, thank you. Jason, do we have more hands up?
We don't have any hands up. We've got several questions in the Q&A, and I'm wondering if some of them could be answered during another portion of this, but I'll read a few off here. Mark has a question. A component of prevention involves enforcement. We need enforcement in order to change behaviors, reduce risk, and mitigate this predictable threat. Providing alternatives for the unhoused is laudable, but eventually for some, it comes down to involving the criminal justice system. These fires threaten lives and property. We're thankful for the effective suppression response. However, our luck will run out eventually. I would like to see a proactive response to encampment threats before it escapes the control of the person who started the fire. What will we be doing different this year compared to last?
I think a whole bunch of the components of that have been answered from what Tina was just talking about in terms of who to call. This collaborative effort between the organizations that's happening now, mapping up other things. So I think we have that covered. If whoever wrote that question doesn't think we covered that, if you can type that a more specific question, that would be great.
And I think the rest of these questions we can address here shortly.
I think so too. I'm working at typing away. I would like to give Paul a chance to talk about another solution we're working on, which is the purchase of George's Hideaway.
Yep.
We do have a meeting specific to George's Hideaway coming together on May 31st, but maybe Paul could give us a brief thumbnail.
You bet. Thanks, Elise. We're happy to inform everybody that we've acquired George's Hideaway. The county owns it. we put in an application to the state for a pretty significant grant, almost over $6 million, to renovate the property and expand it, put tiny homes on it, hook it up to the sewer system, and convert it to permanent supportive housing for approximately 21 individuals. We're working with West County Supportive Services as the service provider. So we're hopeful we'll get good news from the state. We got funding from them for the, excuse me, Elderberry Commons in Sebastopol and Hotel Azura in Santa Rosa. So we've got a good track record. Some of the other jurisdictions have also been successful. So we're real hopeful that we'll get that money and be able to get 21 permanent supportive housing units at George's.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Any comments or questions from, I see Nick, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just, a couple of things. At what point are you going to be doing outreach to the neighborhood on George's? And when are you going to address that at all the public forums that have been ever held about George's? There's been a majority no vote from the town residents about this project, but you guys are going ahead with it anyway. So that's the general consensus that I'm hearing from my constituents, is that, you know, we're having this meeting at the end of the month, but it's already done deal, even though, you know, you're not listening to us. So we're frustrated.
Lynda, you want to take that?
Absolutely. Nick, that's actually not true. And when we had a meeting about Johnson's Beach, where we had real-time surveys of folks, George's was actually the #1 location that was selected by the community. And it was actually also the #1 location that was selected by the community at the town hall that we had back in 2017, when the location across the street from the senior center on Armstrong Woods Road was resoundingly rejected by the community. And George's has been under consideration for essentially the last decade, and was discussed and deliberated by the RASAD team during the redevelopment era, and then conversations. It was almost acquired by the county right before I joined the Board of Supervisors, but fell out because of the cost to bring it up to sort of code standards and to connect to sewer and things like that. So there actually has been substantial support from the community of, you know, if it's going to go somewhere, this seems like it's the best place for it to go. And it is out of the floodplain, and it does have the opportunity to create sort of safe camping areas or tiny homes in the back, which could really help some of the folks who maybe aren't quite ready to move into an apartment situation, but would be more comfortable in a village type situation.
I was at all those meetings, and I'm going to respectfully disagree with your estimation of them, you know, so, but this is kind of par for the course on this project, is you're defining things as you want them defined, and I'm really disappointed.
Well, I'm happy to provide you with the data, Nick, because it was literally, I mean, we actually have the statistics from the survey that was conducted by Zoom, which was, you know, we had the attendance numbers, and we have the numbers of the folks who literally filled out multiple choice surveys. And we also still somewhere have the dots that were placed on the maps, somewhere in hard copies in my office, or at least scanned, because I know that we retained all that information from the one 5 years ago too. So happy to provide that to you for your review.
Great. Anyone else from the Vesta, you got your hand raised?
Sanctioned campgrounds keep coming up, and I know that George's Hideaway is more like little tiny homes. Back when I first started volunteering with Chris Brocate to clean campgrounds, we found that people like to be in little villages. They felt safe. And when Clean River Alliance would do the trash pickup, they would also work with West County Health Centers to come by and do weekly health assessments for people. Those camps that were monitored and cared for were in the forest, but very clean in terms of fire, partly because of the trash pickup, but also because there was oversight. There were people who cared and paid attention. And so a lot of them were literally raked, swept dirt, that whole thing of clearing the ground and clearing the fire debris was part of these little campgrounds. And I know that Clean River Alliance melded into Riverkeeper, and the Riverkeeper has a program for picking up trash on some of these encampments. Can any of these little villages be simply sanctioned, the ones that say Riverkeeper takes care of, so that they do have a place, they do have people paying attention, and they are monitored for fire cleanup?
Is anyone in the best position to answer that?
I mean, I guess I can jump in and just say the question is always where. You know, and we had conversations right around exactly this, which is why folks ended up at the park and ride during the pandemic, was because we had conversations actually with Cindy Foreman, and we're concerned about basically, I mean, essentially we live in an area of very high fire danger. And so sanctioning any kind of a camp, you know, in an area of dense vegetation does present a hazard. So you know, that's why we're trying to look at George's and look at tiny house opportunities. But I will say that some of the brainstorming that came out of the department and agency head meeting, as referenced by Chief Nicholls earlier, did involve also working with grassroots community activists to say, hey, can we distribute just some stuff that's better? Right. So rather than, you know, folks using cooking fires, you know, and you know, warming fires, can we distribute blankets, you know, with battery packs that have, you know, sort of heating in them? Or can we make sure that there is some kind of a meal service that's provided where they, you know, get some hot soup? And I know that Amy was working very hard on that in Guerneville and was frustrated by, you know, some pushback on different distribution, you know, sites that she was working on. So there might be some creative solutions that do support and reduce the risk in existing encampments while we go through that triage and while we go through that service provision.
All right, thanks. Naomi?
Hi, Pip, thanks. I'm not sure if our discussion has segued into the actual George's Hideaway topic, or are we still like closing out concern about fire?
They're all so interconnected.
Okay, all right.
And that was kind of the point of the meeting. So if
Okay, all right. I just wanted to say that I'm completely in support of a navigation center. I have been all along. To me, honestly, the location doesn't make much matter. But I will say that I know that we had those in-person meetings back at the school. I went to one. I know we did the surveys recently. I was at that meeting. I participated in the survey. I don't think myself and the public who participated in the survey and those who were not able to because they don't have Zoom access knew that that was the closeout of the decision. So perhaps if and when we have this actual meeting in the end of May about it, we need to soften the decision for this location and express it in a way that people don't feel like it was made without their input. And granted, I understand there was a lot of input, but I definitely didn't leave that meeting the day we did the survey thinking that whatever the answer was going to be out of the, you know, highest number, that would be the decision. So I think that's the confusing part. But again, I want a navigation center. And again, the place doesn't really matter to me, but I think the public's going to get a little frisky about it. So we might want to find the best way to accept that and figure out how to explain ourselves. Thank you.
That's one of the reasons why we have a meeting scheduled for May 31st, specifically to talk about George's Hideaway, and your suggestion and Nick's to gather questions and concerns from the public in advance so that we have people ready to provide solutions and help with those questions will be available. So
yeah, I totally get that, but now we're after the fact. So I guess if I could do it all again, like I think about it like parenting or something, I wish we could have made it more clear a little bit earlier that we were at that point, just because then maybe Nick and I could have said something. Maybe we could have understood and helped support the process instead of, oh, the process is done. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm sure everyone knows what I'm getting at. Again, I support the navigation center. I just think we closed it out. I don't know, not the way I would have done it myself, but thank you for listening.
Thanks, Naomi. Let's we're gonna move to public questions, and I see Kerry has his hand up.
I would love to say Thank you, Lynda. Thank you, 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 thank you. Unfortunately, Danny didn't make it. Neither did Luke. Neither did Jeffrey. They all wanted to move to the, or Becky. They wanted to move there. They didn't live to see it. Thank you, Lynda. Thank you. There's people here who you haven't questioned and talked about. That's the homeless who are in Guerneville, the people that Sally and I deal with. They are so looking forward to this. Cliff will be jumping out of his skin with joy tonight when I tell him, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. At least 21. What ends homelessness? 4 walls, a roof, and a floor. That's how we end this. How can we end it countywide? A square mile village dedicated to the homeless with a dedicated tax, funding it, providing jobs, providing permanent places for people to live. That's how we get them out of our forest. That's how we stop the fires. It's that simple. Housing, housing, housing. Thank you, Lynda. Thank you. Thank you.
The both of us.
From the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, I need a sec. I know we all like to complain about this, but let's all try to be respectful of each other. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on this. This has been going on so long out here, and we fight amongst ourselves constantly. Something's got to give. Something's going to happen. Something's got to happen. And we may make mistakes, and we're going to make mistakes, but at least things are moving forward. We've never tried anything this big before. So let's get the community behind this, whether it's done or not, whether we didn't like the way it was done or not, we're moving forward. No one wants the people on the street. The people don't want to be on the street. We don't want fires. We don't want to have to call the sheriff. This may help mitigate that. So let's all have our opinions, but be respectful of each other, okay? And I'm going to, once again, get off my high horse. All right. I don't see any other hands raised. Jason, are there any questions that I'm missing, whether he...
Nope, we are clear at this moment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to committee reports, and these will be relatively short. We have some ad hoc reports on trash, land use, and vacation rental, and we will start with trash, and I'm gonna be quiet now. Lisa?
Hi. Thanks for your high horse, Pip. I appreciated it. I wish there were someone who could give their report before me because I'm still metabolizing that last comment. But if there is not. So here's the brief update on trash. We all need to have mindfulness around trash, as Lise always reminds me, as it then ends up in the river, which we all love. Elise has talked about doing a newsletter dedicated just to trash because it's a very large topic. I spoke with a gentleman named Tim who does the Bye Bye Mattress program, and there is actually a mattress and e-waste recycling event on the 23rd in Monterrey. So hopefully people will find it in themselves to come there with their mattresses and e-waste. Second point is that Elise has hooked me up with a gentleman named Brandon who runs the community recycling efforts, the community bin efforts, PIP, which you had mentioned at the last meeting. So I'm getting onto that. And there is also a woman who Elise is connecting me with named Ambrosia from Recology, who handles both grants for new trash receptacles and has information on compost bin rollout in the communities that don't have composting right now. I also put out word to the Forestville Chamber about Adopt a Road. And I continue to try to monitor next door for people who have ongoing trash issues. I will sum up with the fact that getting into the summer we need to, I'm going to do a call out for volunteers to get a more robust trash committee. And I will also be looking into where to dump our oily rags from maintaining our decks with turpentine so that does not lead to more fires. So with that, I'm gonna end there. I feel like my little report is sort of doesn't rise to the level of what we've just heard. So onward.
We still have to live and we still have to get trash out of the way, right?
We do.
So
We
it's
do.
important. It's important. Nothing,
Yes.
nothing that we're doing is not important in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, and you know, Vesta can't do it alone. I always like to say on her portion of River Road. So as everyone, we all need to help. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Lisa on the council on trash? All right, Vesta.
A friend of mine recently said that he would like to volunteer to be a segment of River Road. How does he go about doing that to be, and it would promote his business, which is good. So what is the Adopt a Road program currently? How do you get involved in it? And what does it entail? Who to contact, etc.?
So I'm going to put my address in the chat, my email address, and then I'll get that person the info about Adopt a Road from the county, if that's all right.
Anyone in the public have any questions regarding trash? I don't see any hands. Oh, yeah, John Uniac.
So, okay, I'm on. Not that many years ago, all these communities had community cleanup day, which was a big issue in all the communities where Recology worked, and everybody in the communities brought their trash to a central location to be disposed of. Those disappeared over the years, and I don't think any community is doing them anymore. I don't know why, but it certainly behoove everybody to bring back those cleanup days and get rid of a lot of the trash that's laying everywhere. That's all I got.
I second that, but
I agree, and I will work on that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Vera, and we're on trash, by the way.
Yes, so we're with Friends of Fife Creek, right? Bridge to Bridge project. And every Thursday we get together and the clean team, Carol Shoemate from Russian River Keepers, comes by and takes whatever trash they can that's placed on the corner of Brookside Lane and 116. And there's oftentimes when she shows up at the Woods Resort parking lot where we start our cleanups, she has a truck so full that she can't even help us take the trash that we have gathered doing our project, Bridge to Bridge project, and has to come back for it on another day. So what is being done to alleviate the amount of trash that Russian River Keepers and just Carol Shoemate alone now, a lot of times because we lost Chris Brocate and all the volunteers due to COVID and all that stuff also. What is being done to alleviate the velocity of the trash that Carol can't get in one foul swoop. Like her and Carrie and Sally make numerous trips to the dump. It's just too much. What are we doing about it?
Sure, we have so many different programs running to try to decrease the volume of trash. We have a Leave No Trace program going out through regional parks, which actually we've seen the benefits of already. There was a bag left at Sam's with a note on it outside the trash can that said, "We bought this here, now we're returning the empties." It was a bag of their trash from what they purchased, because we've been making. So Sonoma County Tourism is creating a bag pickup program. Regional Parks has been doing a Leave No Trace program. We have a tri-county pledge about pack it out. We also have been investing in a lot of different programs. Lisa, we have a trash tracker, and we're working together on all these different ways about, how do we get mattresses picked up? How do we have Adopt a Road? How do we have Recology go through? Lisa has been working with communities in terms of doing community cleanups and getting dumpsters out there in order to do community cleanups. I mean, this is an effort that is ongoing, and I think that we're making some significant progress. It's a lot less than it was, a couple of years ago, and we're just going to keep at it.
Thanks, Elise. I see Kiri's hand raised, and who better to talk about trash?
Most definitely. Sally and I, we run 3 different programs inside Guerneville. Every night we're out there emptying the downtown trash cans and picking up across all the gutters. We do it at night so there's nobody out there parked, so we can get all the trash downtown, all the crud out of the gutters. We work with the homeless there in town on a constant basis, removing their trash as much as we very possibly can. And we also put a trailer in the bottom of the plaza for those that only put out a little tiny bit. And first we only pulled in about 150. Now we're pulling in around 500 pounds a week from individuals around the area. And it's just individual bags that come in once a week. That helps. Beyond that, Carol does a fantastic job. We definitely need funding. That's what it's about. My limitations for our company is the fact that we have to do other work so we can take care of trash. So funding would really, 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 really help both Carol and Sally and myself take care of this in our area. It's not that it's too much, it's that there's too little. I.e., I'm already spending 2 to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week doing this. So, I mean, I could do more, but there you are.
Let's get to my part about the strategic governance options for local services. Keep going through the ad hocs so I can give you some answers, Carrie.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Carrie. Let's move on to land use and Kyra.
Hi there, I'm going to be very brief. So we met last month on a special meeting because we had a conflict in our schedule. We went over about 10 to 12 different use permits. I think the biggest thing was that the public really put their 2 cents into the board of zoning board, and the Guerneville Lock Park Hotel is I can't talk tonight, sorry. The feedback was that it was too large, and so they've asked them to take the 4th story off, and we'll see what they come back to with the Board of Adjustments, probably in the fall of this year. Our next meeting is May 26th. I hope to see you all there. We'll review all permits that are available and would love to have you there. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyra. Any questions for Kyra from the council? Don't see any hands. Anything in the public on land use? If you guys are interested in land use, make sure to attend those meetings. Okay, vacation rental, Vesta.
I am going to read this, so I'm concise. After more than 20 meetings, including with every municipal advisory council in the county and extensive meetings with stakeholders and industry groups, Permit Sonoma's public meeting presenting the updated vacation rental ordinance went before the Planning Commission on March 17th with the intention of sending it to the Board of Supervisors for review and hopefully approval. The proposed changes create a new vacation rental license permit program, performance standards, enforcement strategies, and permanent caps on vacation rentals in areas disproportionately impacted by vacation rental businesses. One of the commissioners asked for more outreach to and input from homeless services agencies. So the VR ordinance will have to wait until that research is completed and included in the ordinance update review. Facing the end of the VR cap in specific areas heavily impacted by this industry this August of this year means that the board might have to come up with another solution while this additional research is completed. As we head into tourist season coming out of COVID, we expect more tourists coming to our neighborhoods and continued pressure on real estate sales. In the meantime, this is our gold. The 24-hour hotline for complaints and concerns has been established and will go live shortly, maybe within a week. This improvement to enforcement of the existing ordinance does not have to wait for the new ordinance to be approved. This will give residents who experience problems an important tool for solving them within the 30 to 60-minute timeframes already established. It takes the pressure to resolve issues off neighbors and places it on the VR business and property managers, and also puts an emphasis on locally owned property management companies to do this work because they're right there and can solve the problems. We will continue monitoring this ordinance update and offering our input until the new ordinance is adopted. I'm going to put in the chat update places where you can get updates, Permit Sonoma's site, and then you can also sign up for email updates on the Permit Sonoma website. And then for the history of our committee and the progress we've been doing over the last 2 years, our website, russianrivermac.org, I'm putting a link in the chat as well. We're currently waiting for the text and the video of the March meeting in order to update our website with current information. And then you can also check with Permit Sonoma's YouTube channel, and I'll put that in the chat as well. As soon as we have that stuff, and I know partly is the county websites are being updated and redone, and that's one of the reasons why we don't have the information that we normally have. So I'm going to put this in both in the chat, and I think I am going to be able to put it in, maybe not in the Q&A section, but I put it in the chat. So check out those, yeah.
Something that just came out today is that the Land Use Commission now has this calendared. So it is May 5th at 1:05 p.m.
What is May 5th at 1:05 p.m.?
The viewing of the vacation rental. It's an update to the county's vacation rental ordinance. The update includes new program, vacation rental license program, the licenses worldwide, the performance standards, all the things you just talked about. So those things are going to the Planning Commissioner May 5th at 1:05 p.m. That just came out today.
Oh, great. And can we also get a link to the last meeting's recording and the text of that meeting as well? Because that hasn't been posted.
We can find it and post it on the River Mac Facebook page and on Supervisor Hopkins page. I'm not going to pull it out at this moment.
Yeah, please. I would love to have that because that would help us keep our website updated so we keep people informed. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
You also have a question from Alexis Averbuck. Sorry, I jumped in.
Yeah, like I just want to make sure that no one on the council has a question.
Okay.
All right, Alexis.
Alexis, you should
Go.
be able to talk.
Great, I just got the unmute. I live on the Russian River and I'm a permanent resident, and there are vacation rentals around me. And I don't have a huge problem with it because I do think that it actually helps our area. And I know that's not everybody's opinion. What I'm really commenting on is that I attended that March 17th Planning Commission meeting, and I was really kind of shocked at the haphazard way they were talking about the cap level. They went from 10% to 5%, and they're just sort of bandying around numbers. And that made me feel very uncomfortable because it seems like the kind of thing someone should do a financial study on, just a look to see what would happen. Because depending on where we are in the county, we all have different needs. You know, I know that there's certain neighborhoods that are really messed up and others that aren't. But down where we are, I also think it's a bit of a fiction that like these multi-million-dollar, multi-$100,000 homes are going to turn into affordable housing if they don't get a vacation permit. And what about, instead of hammering the cap question, look at how to get the money from the vacation renters to pay for the services we need. We full-time residents who, whether we have homes or don't have homes, could use the incoming money from visitors to our county.
Again, something that we're going to address as soon as we talk about the Strategic Local Services Project.
Great.
And just
glad to hear it.
The 5% versus 10%, it's not haphazard at all. It's actually very carefully studied, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community. And so it's one of the things that it is extremely complex, but it is being dealt with in a very conscientious manner.
Okay, because the guy just threw it out like it was off the top of his head. And I was like, how did he just come up with that?
Yeah, no, and they talked about that specifically or last meeting, and if you have questions, you can email Vesta too, but
yeah,
it was very methodical. Okay, I think that's it for public on that. So we're gonna move on because Elise is dying here. On to staff report on some ongoing issues, and the first thing is strategic plan.
It is. It's very exciting because, you know, Lynda and I, when we first met 4 years ago, we talked about how important some sort of a strategic plan for the area was, and Supervisor Hopkins had gotten some funding allocated for it, and we worked really, really hard to put together what we're calling a local governance study. And that local governance study, we've now put together an RFP, and it will go out in May, and we'll be putting a call out for consultants to come and help us. So basically what we're going to be doing is looking at where are the gaps in local services along the lower Russian River. How can those be paid for and managed locally? Because one of the challenges we have is, even if something is like, well, it's covered by the county, but who knows, you know, from over in Santa Rosa when the bathroom in Guerneville's dirty, you know, there's too much of a disconnect. So there have been a lot of rumors around this local governance study, because some people are like, oh, you have a deep desire to get incorporation, or you have a deep desire to change our CSD, or there is no particular agenda. We're trying to work very hard to study where are our possible revenue sources. So answering the question that I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, the last speaker brought up in terms of, you know, getting more TOT coming back to source to the local area. We're looking at, we're going to be looking at all the different revenue sources that come in and how those are being spent. We're going to be analyzing how other rural areas cover these issues. We're going to be looking at what are possible governance solutions from, you know, maybe just having some county offices, satellite offices out here would do the trick, and getting some more funding aimed at that. Or maybe it's analyzing and figuring out better ways to use our community service districts and to have people involved in that. Or maybe it's having some of the portions of our area going into incorporation. I mean, there are a lot of different possible solutions, and we do not have any particular, you know, solution determined. What we're going to do is bring in these consultants, and we're going to have 3 phases. The first phase will be discovery and analysis. So we're going to be figuring out where the big holes are, analyzing the revenue and the situations, and then they're going to go back and do a bunch of analysis and figure out some possible solutions. Then they're going to come back again to the community. We're going to have 3 different community engagements sections and come back to the community and say, okay, this is what we're hearing. This is where we have gaps. These are possibilities, and discuss all the possible solutions and ways to move forward. And then they're going to go back with that information and then come out with proposed solutions, and we're going to have another discussion. So it's very exciting, and it's a very big process that's going to hopefully answer a lot of these questions that we have all the time in terms of where does our money go, and how do we get local services funded, how do we get trash picked up, you know, all these different pieces that we've been struggling for years. So it's very exciting. And that RFP was going to come out in May, which means we'll get responses in June, we'll review them all in July, they'll start sometime in the fall. So that's a big thing going forward. Another important thing going forward is it came up at the last meeting. Someone asked Claudia about the Russian River confluence and what's going on with that. And she was a little confused because it was a different phrase than what we had used, and we've used many. So the Russian River confluence is a big topic, and one that we will have a specific agenda item in the future. But just a quickie, the Russian River Confluence is an organization, a multi-agency, organization that was established at the end of 2016 by Supervisor Gore and joined by Supervisor Hopkins in 2017. And we picked it up. It all sort of got put on the back burner when the fires and disasters happened. And the goal of the confluence is a thriving and healthy Russian River. And the people who are working on it are a really wide range of agencies. We have like 18 different groups working at the California Water Board, Sonoma County Water Agency, Russian River Watershed Association, Russian River Keeper, Sonoma Land Trust, regional parks, Mendocino Flood Control, Gold Ridge RCDs. It's just a sample. And so within that, there are 3 major initiatives moving forward. One is establishing a governance structure. The second is establishing technical environmental to work on the health of the river. And one of the pieces of that is collaborating with an organization called the Russian River Regional Monitoring Program, R3MP, which is establishing monitoring for the health of the river from the tip in the Potter Valley going all the way down to the ocean in Jenner. So we're going to have monitoring and being able to make fact-based decisions in terms of the health of the river. It's a very exciting movement. The third area is the communications piece, and that's the piece you guys may have heard the most about, which is establishing some communication tools that can help engage with the public. The Keep Tahoe Blue kind of project, where we're going to have bumper stickers and merchandise and talking points and videos and education and activities, all to engage and keep people moving. And that's all moving forward as well. You'll start seeing some of those merchandise pieces and logo things that will be out and about in the public. And we're just going to be providing those for free to businesses to use as they see fit. So that's going to be probably rolling out towards the end of May. So we'll talk about that some more in an agenda item in June. I just wanted to, since the question had come up, I wanted to let you know that all is going on. I'm actually coming to you live today from the 39th Salmonid Restoration Conference here in Santa Cruz, learning about water and how to keep our water healthy. A lot of great stuff going on here. A few meetings you need to know about. April 27th, Mike McGuire is having a meeting on the Guerneville Caltrans ADA beautification update. They're going to be ripping out our sidewalks and replacing them. And Mike McGuire is hosting a meeting on that. You can find the details on Supervisor Hopkins' page. On May 5th, Sonoma County Water Agency is putting together a meeting for the Vacation Beach and the Orchard neighborhood on the water main break. They're going to be talking about the solutions and the fixes that are going to be taking place for the lift station and the water main that broke a couple months ago. And May 31st, as we've discussed, we're going to have a Guerneville Town Hall of Neighbors specifically on George's Hideaway. So tried to squeeze everything in a very short period of time, but that's my report for today.
Thank you, Elise. Any council members have any questions on for Elise? All right. Jason, do we have anything in the public, from the public? Nope. I guess he's not there.
Oh, sorry. I forgot. I'm in charge now.
Oh.
He had like, I was busy talking. I'm so used to having him do all that background stuff. Quickly looking. Vera's got her hand up. Hold on just a second. Allow Vera to talk. Vera?
Hi, sorry, I got distracted about you being in Santa Cruz at the salmon restoration thing. But
I'm missing the poster session for you people. So appreciate every moment.
Thank you. I love you. You're so awesome.
Totally worth it.
The ADA beautification meeting, what was the date on that?
It's the 27th. It's going to be the 27th. Lynda, do you remember the time? Is it 6:30? I'm thinking. I'll post the link on it. We've got some great beautification
6:30,
elements.
I think. 6:30 on April 27th.
Yeah.
3 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Okay, I don't see any questions. So our next meeting is in approximately 2 months from now. If anyone has anything that they want us to have on the agenda, please, you can bring it up now, or you can send us correspondence. You can get our emails and how to contact us on the Lower Russian River MAC Facebook page or on the county website. But we want to hear what you guys want us to discuss, so we can get to the issues that people care about the most. And with that,
Could you put the links on the chat so that we have links and that we don't have to look it up?
I'll send it out to you all after. There's just, I'm not going to be fumbling around looking for links and taking your time waiting for me to do that. I'll get them out.
Okay.
Just look for it.
It's now 8:12, and I think we've completed our agenda. Great meeting. It was an emotional meeting. Thank you for everyone for participating. If we can have a motion to adjourn, we can entertain that.
I'll motion to adjourn.
All right. I think Kyra had her hand up first.
Okay.
You want a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor, let's do a roll call and get it official.
Naomi?
Yep.
Tony?
Yep.
Pip?
Yep.
Vesta?
Yes.
Kyra?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you everyone
Bye.
for attending.
Bye.